Hello, back live again. So my cheeks are rosy, and I think I got a sunburn today. It's February. It was that hot. It was 70 degrees here. It's mad, isn't it? The other thing that I've just been doing is finally, because I wrote this book about fear of weight gain, and I asked my sister to do the cover art because she's an illustrator. So you would think that that would be simple enough. I think I finished the final edits on the book in maybe April last year. Asked her, so it's taken her that long to get round to drawing it, and it probably took her 30 seconds to draw it because she's really quick with stuff. But sisters, right? So now, finally got the artwork, so I'm getting ready to publish that. But I honestly can't remember what's in the book. Not really. Like, I can remember the vague theme, but I'm like, so a very, professional person would reread it, wouldn't they? But you know me, I don't think I can be asked. So I think I'm just going to hit publish and see what happens. Like, I have had it edited, so hopefully there isn't any massive errors, but I just can't remember what the content is. So that just means that people will ask me, won't they? And I'll be like, oh, what's in there? I can't remember. You guys can tell me. All right. Iona says, I just thought I used to have a friend. Actually, she wasn't really my friend at school. I don't think she liked me very much. Her name was Iona, and like her friends called her One because Iona was spelled the way she spelled it was with an E, I think. So it was like one with that's the I and then one. Anyway, I didn't call her that because I didn't think she liked me, so I wasn't allowed. Anyway, Iona says, do you ever experience seemingly random moments of guilt, anxiety around food, body image after a long time of not having them? And if so, how do you handle this? No, I can honestly say I don't at all. So I don't handle it. Anyway, next question. Lindsay K says, have you worked with women who resume their menstrual cycle? Yeah, like most, I think actually all people that I've worked with that have got to full recovery have resumed their menstrual cycle. So any suggest, who never resume their menstrual cycle? Oh, no, I haven't. And if you haven't, then I would be suspicious, Lindsay, that you're not fully nutritionally rehabilitated. I really would. It's probably not what you want to hear, is it? But it's highly likely that if your body hasn't kicked that off again, then for whatever reason it's feeling like it can't, or it shouldn't, or it doesn't have the resources to do so. And so I would say, as I say to every fucking question that anybody asks me, eat more food and see what happens. Hi, Lois. Maria 2004 says, I'm doing the best I ever have in recovery. Great. Finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and I want to say thank you. Oh, you don't have to say thank you. That's very sweet. Not a question. So I'll move on to a question. Teal Dragonfly S says, hi, Tabitha. Do you have any tips on compulsive addictive purging? I can't seem to break or stop it. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. You can stop it. I know it's really annoying thing for me to say, but you absolutely can stop it. You don't want to, and it's very difficult. And in that moment when you want to purge, it feels like, it's like everything in your being is saying, I want to purge, but you can stop it. And so my biggest tip is understand that you already have an immense amount of willpower and determination. All people with restrictive eating disorders are very gifted in being very gifted in the stubborn asshole department. And so we're all really good at that. And you have to apply that giftedness to being a stubborn asshole when it comes to not purging. So you have to make a pact with yourself that it does not matter what happens, how you feel, anything. You have to make a pact with yourself that you will not purge. That was like me with compulsive movement. That's what I had to do. I was like, whatever my brain says, however I'm feeling, whatever, it doesn't matter. I made a pact with myself. I'm not exercising for at least a year. And that was the only way I could come to do it. If I told myself, oh, just try, no, that went out the window. You have to really, really be very determined. And you'll find that you can do it. You really will. Good luck. Just do it. Maybellina says, hi, Tabs. It's an upside down question mark. I don't even know how you do that on the keyboard. If anybody knows, let me know, because I don't know. I just would like to know. How to talk to my mum in a way that I don't explode. I'm not the one to ask. I'm just kidding. She reminds me to have dinner a lot, and it makes me anxious. I know she's checking on me, but it's just, I lost it. It always happens when I scroll. It's so annoying. But it's just, okay. So I used to explode if my mother, all she'd actually have to do is look at me. Like, she could look at me in a way that said, you're not eating enough. I swear. She could just look at me in that way, and I would just, I was horrible. My mother's the sweetest person in the world. She's a wonderful cook, a brilliant baker, and she loves nothing more than to make people cakes and bring you tea and biscuits. You know, she's just lovely like that. You can just be sitting watching telly, and she's the kind of person that just makes you a cup of tea and brings you a slice of cake. You didn't even ask. You know, it's the kind of, I really need her around right now. She's in a flipping other country and I miss it. But boy, when I had an eating disorder, did not appreciate that. And so there's my mum just scurrying around the kitchen doing her thing like she loves to do, creating wonderful food, and I'd be skulking around somewhere hoping that nobody came and found me and offered me some food. And of course she would do just that. She'd come and find me and offer me some food, and all hell would break loose because she had the audacity to bring me a biscuit. And then it turned into a bit of a dynamic over the years. It really did. You know, she'd look at me wrong and I'd explode. It was like my mum was the person I'd take it all out on. That's what they say, isn't it? You know, like, unhappy people have anger management issues. I was an unhappy person and I had anger management issues, but just directed at my mother. I'd be much more polite to other people. If somebody who wasn't my mother offered me a biscuit, I'd just be like, oh, no, thank you very much. I don't want anything. If it was my mum, and I didn't like that about myself. I'd always bite her head off, and then I'd feel like such a bitch afterwards because I was such a bitch. And, you know, then I'd sort of like try and apologize in ways like texting her afterwards. Oh, it's really nice to see you. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, I just like bore into her because she offered me a piece of Victoria sponge and stormed out, slammed the door and drove away. And then an hour later I'm texting, oh, it's really nice to see you, Mum. Anyway, and then it just turned into, it's almost like this thing I felt that I couldn't control. I felt like I could not bite my tongue when I was around her. I always had to snap. I always had to be nasty. And I just addressed it with myself at one point. I just told myself to stop being a fucking bitch. And I think a large part of it was for me was recognizing that the reason I snapped at her is because she threatened my eating disorder. She was the person that threatened my eating disorder the most. And so therefore she was the person that I snapped at the most. And once I'd understood that, that was helpful for sure, but I still had to sort of break the dynamic. And that basically took me giving myself a bloody good talking to. And I would, as on the drive to my parents' house, I'd be sitting there going like, be nice, don't be a bitch. I'd like prep talk myself. No matter what she says, no matter how irritated you are, don't snap, just be nice. Blah, blah. And I'd really like, I had to psych myself up to be nice. I mean, how fucked up is that? But it really worked for me. And the first couple of times was really difficult. I would be gritted tooth. She'd offer me some food and I'd be like, no, thank you. Because I really wanted to scream at her. And then I'd be like, no, I've got to say yes. And then I'd be like, no, thank you, actually. Yes, Mum. Yes, I'd love a biscuit. Thanks, Mum. So, you know, I was like having to break a lot of things. I had to break that default response to being asked if I wanted something to eat. My default response was no. And I had to actually force myself to then go, actually, yes. I'll take it. And then my other default response was to be nasty. And I had to stop that. You know, the reason that it was a default response that emerged is because it worked as far as my eating disorder was concerned. So say if mum offered me a piece of Victoria sponge or whatever cake she baked, if I was horrible, we'd then get into an argument. And getting into an argument would take the focus off the Victoria sponge and turn the focus onto our argument. So I would get out of it every time by getting into an argument, if you see what I mean. And so I think the reason that that became such a default for my eating disorder with my mum is just because it worked. You know, if I got into an argument and I was horrible and vile, then suddenly the problem was the argument, not the Victoria sponge. And I had to grow up a lot in in a very short space of time when I decided to recover. And that's when I realized that actually the problem here is that I'm scared of a Victoria sponge cake or a fruit cake or a flapjack or whatever the heck it was that she just baked. I'd be like, that is actually the problem here, I'm afraid. And once you can identify fear, once I could identify fear, I then could see the path to that I needed to take. I need to eat the fucking flapjack. And so it's like you've got to stop the deflection. The deflection is the anger response, the snapping, the arguments and things like that. And you've got to cut to what the actual problem is, which is the flapjack. And then you've got to make yourself eat the flapjack. For American people, flapjack is like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like it's made of oats, but it's not an oatmeal cookie like you guys. It's like you take oats and you bake them with butter and sugar, basically, until it all goes sort of like the oats absorb it all, and then it all sticks together. And then when it's baked, you cut it into squares, and it's really nice. Anyway, I digress. And so that's basically how I stopped snapping at my mother, was by identifying that my snapping at my mother was actually about me not wanting to eat food and then forcing myself, rather than snap at my mother, to eat the food. Long story short, isn't it? Anna Vicky says, hi Tabitha, I'm working hard to eat, but the weight gain has made me very depressed, which causes my family to get mad, frustrated at you. Your family getting mad or frustrated you because you're depressed, or because your depression is causing you to not engage, or because your depression is causing you maybe to restrict? I don't know. So I wonder why they're getting mad, frustrated at you. If genuinely, if you feel that you have depression, then you should speak to a psychiatrist. I'm always advocate for people to get help with that sort of thing. If you think it's the sort of normal depression, what I class as relatively normal recovery depression, then it should pass. If it's depression that is there because you still have fear of weight gain and you're in a larger body and you're disliking it because you still have fear of weight gain that's making you depressed, then that's something that you need to address by rewiring fear of weight gain. So I think that you should focus on not worrying about your family. Let's just not worry about them, but focus on trying to find out why you feel depressed and then solving or taking steps to help yourself with that. Amanda Fisher, how do you deal? It's just such a good question. That's all that's there. Just how do you deal? I don't even know some days. I really don't, Amanda. Kira says, what's your opinion on using marijuana during eating disorder recovery? Well, I couldn't because it wasn't legal when I was in recovery, but I really wish it had been. And if it had been, I probably, because I was such an idiot, I'd probably have been like, no, I'm too pure. I'm too pure to smoke weed. And I really, really should have, and I needed to, like, I think it's just that sort of thing. I can tell, because I was such an annoying person when I had an eating disorder. I just know what my reaction to weed would have been, probably. And I genuinely think if used correctly, it can be massively helpful, just because it can help lower anxiety. And if it helps you lower anxiety and reduces those inhibitions, then it's going to lead to you eating more and feeling less anxious about doing so. And that can only be a good thing. And I do live in a state where marijuana is legal. And so I have used it recreationally, not commonly. Like, I actually just don't enjoy it. Like, if I'm going to use something, it's a glass of wine, 100%. I don't enjoy, and to me, it's like nothing in using marijuana, but it just makes me feel super chilled out and sleepy. So if I'm anxious about something, I have these little tiny chill pills that I take like a quarter of, and it just knocks me out, and I'll go to sleep for the night. And usually the thing that I'm anxious about is like buying a horse, selling a horse, breeding a horse. It's all that sort of stuff. It's not like the sort of most people will be like, that's nothing to be anxious about. But hey, okay, I am sometimes, they're important to me. So just having used it for the small amount that I have, I can say that for me, it really, if I'm feeling anxious about something, it just makes me super relaxed, kind of sleepy, and probably a bit, increases my appetite as well. So all really good things. And I really wish that A, it had been legal when I was in recovery, B, that I had been the type of person that would have been brave enough to even try and use it when I was in recovery. And I think that if it is legal where you are and you are brave, then you should. And it's not about being brave. It's about I don't know what the right word is. I was just such a any aid to when I had an eating disorder, anything that might help me, I was just absolutely against. And that was one of those things. And I do actually think that was a fear thing, wasn't it? So it is about being brave. I would have been afraid of using cannabis because I knew it would probably give me the munchies and that scared the shit out of me. So it is a brave thing. So you should absolutely, I'm not saying that you should need to walk around stoned off your face the whole time, but that's genuinely not, I don't think, what cannabis's best use is. I think its best use can be helping people reduce their anxiety. Am I currently working with clients going through the menopause? Yes. I don't know if you had a question specific to that, but the answer is yes. Oh, I lost my place again. Stina says, hey, Tabitha, I'm actually in an online lesson, but I really wanted to ask for you for some advice. What lesson is this? Taking an online class. I wonder what you're learning. Except I keep needing reassurance and I need to show my friends that I'm eating. Any advice, please? I did that. I had a word for it. Exhibition eating. I would exhibition eat. So I sort of especially if I knew, say if I was, because I lived at university and there was 4 of us in the flat. If I was the only one in the flat, even if it was sort of my lunchtime, because I had very set meal times, if it was my lunchtime, say if I knew that somebody might be coming home in the next half hour, I'd wait. I'd wait so that they could walk through the door, so that then I'd eat whatever I was eating and somebody could witness it, because I always wanted people to witness what I was eating so that they then can accuse me of not eating. Anyway, so I don't know if it's the sort of similar sort of thing that you're doing there. You'll only need to do that sort of thing if you're restricting, aren't you? Because if you're worried that people are going to accuse you of eating, then it's probably because you're not eating enough, isn't it? Because generally, most people don't just walk around randomly accusing people of not eating enough. If somebody's going to accuse you of not eating enough, then it's probably because you're not eating enough. And so the answer to that question, my advice, is eat enough. And then your friends won't be worried that you're not eating enough. And then you won't feel that you need to exhibition eat in front of them to make them stop worrying that you're not eating enough. Robin says, hi, Tab. I really want to lift weights. 3 months in recovery. So can I start back slowly? I can't answer that question for you. It's too specific. For me, 3 months in is not long enough. But in order to answer that question, I would really need to know. I'd need to assess whether I thought how you were doing in recovery and how much of an exercise compulsion that you had. And if I thought that you were actually over your exercise compulsion, which for me, 3 months is a bit of a short space of time. But I don't really feel that I can adequately answer that question. Oh, now it totally jumped. Now I have no idea. Elizabeth says, how would you recommend committing to recovery when dealing with the symptoms of refeeding syndrome? I'm having issues getting into treatment due to my labs, so I'm trying to refeed at home. I've been dealing with electrolyte imbalance issues. I tend to think about my GDP is monitoring, and it's increasing my fear of food is making starting unrestricted eating difficult. You have to, refeeding syndrome is relatively short-lived usually, so it generally lasts weeks, maybe a bit longer for some people, but it's not something that's going to go on forever. If you are at risk of refeeding syndrome, of course, you have to be working with a doctor, somebody who knows about refeeding syndrome, doctor or dietitian, and you have to help, they will help you get yourself to the point where you're no longer at the risk of refeeding syndrome. So you have to wait until you're no longer at the risk of refeeding syndrome to start unrestricted eating. However, that is not an excuse for everyone else to go like, oh, I think I'm at the risk of refeeding syndrome. Like recovery is about not bullshitting yourself and not believing your own bollocks. And so don't use that as an excuse. Refeeding syndrome is relatively rare. And if you have been diagnosed with it, then you take the path that whomever diagnosed you suggests until you get to the point where you are no longer at risk of refeeding syndrome, and then you eat without restriction. So refeeding syndrome doesn't mean you don't eat without restriction. It just means that there's going to be a bit of a wait until you can get to that point. And if you haven't been diagnosed with refeeding syndrome, do not use that as an excuse to not do unrestricted eating. All right. I've got time for one more. Jackie says, is it disordered? Probably is, isn't it? If you're asking, is it disordered? It probably is. Anyway, I should read the question. Is it disordered to be afraid to eat the same food twice in a day? Yes. Like if I eat a banana, I can't have another. Or if I eat almond butter, I don't let myself eat it again that day. Yes. Yes, it's disordered. Do I need to elaborate? Probably not. I mean, Jackie, it's disordered. Like, of course it's disordered. Like, everybody else doesn't go around going like, I already ate a crisp today, so I'm not allowed another one. Like, that's not a thing that normal people do, is it? So, therefore, it has to be an eating disordered thing, right? I mean, how far does this go? How many, cups of tea and biscuits have I had today? Many. So, like, it's normal to eat the same food multiple times a day. Like, it's not normal to eat only the same food multiple times a day. But if you have a cup of tea, you've got to have a biscuit. And you're not going to necessarily... I can't even remember a lot of the time what I ate earlier. So I don't even know. But God, when I had an eating disorder, I would have been able to remember exactly what I ate earlier. But so the fact that you're even like that aware of what you've already eaten that day, that's disordered. It's all disordered. Like, not having an eating disorder is just freedom from all of these silly things that come into your head and feel like rules, and like even the things that you wonder about, and the things that you sort of your brain clocks up. The fact that your brain will even clock like, oh, I ate a banana earlier. It's like when you don't have an eating disorder, all of that stuff is so fucking unimportant. That's just it's just so fucking unimportant. It really is. It's like I couldn't rank anything of less importance than trying to work out if I'd already eaten something earlier on in the day that I fancied eating again. It's just so unimportant to my brain. And that's normal. So yes, absolutely. That's disordered. All right, bye.